Now let's take a look at some of the wider issues around some of today's other big Africa stories. For that, I'm joined now by the former editor of Ghana's daily graphic newspaper, Duodu. Also here is the Africa analyst and healthcare expert, Dorcas Gwata. Welcome to you both. Let's start with Somalia. So we've been hearing about this car bomb that targeted a UN convoy yesterday. 36 workers killed in this attack in a quarry. Al-Shabaab's confidence seems to be increasing. Are they gaining traction, Dorcas? We worry that they are. And these are regional problems. If al-Shabaab is migrating into Kenya, an unstable region means that we are a secure region. They are probably gaining track. This is a global problem, and it requires a global response. I'm not sure that we've been fast enough in responding as a global response in tackling al-Shabaab. Who else should be involved in the fight against al-Shabaab, Cameron?
Well, everybody is there already. The United Nations has troops there. The AU has 20,000 people in Somalia. And yet, al-Shabaab is going ahead and doing what it is doing. The Kenya authorities are, very serious about tackling it. And some of the stories we've heard about those killings, the 36 who died, amazingly horrific, They separated the Muslims from the Christians, made them lie down on the road. A man who lost his wife has survived, and he was telling his story to the BBC. It's terrible.
So this has happened then, and there, as you say, there is a regional response. Then what else needs to happen? Do they need outside help? Do they need the Western world to come riding to their aid? I worry that the appetite to intervene isn't there, because it's Africa. You believe that they should? I think we need international intervention. With structured framework, I think we have to have a structured framework in which international parties intervene. There are problems with that because we're Africans, we're very proud, and we don't really always want international interventions. But this is a regional problem, which is people are forced to migrate out of their regions. That comes with inherent problems. Yes, well, let's look at the point that Cameron raised, because you already have an international presence there. The African Union is there. So is this too big for the African Union and its partners, or are they just not particularly good at what it is that they're supposed to be doing?
Can I address that? Look, when the United States persuaded Ethiopia to go into Somalia, the whole scenario changed. Why? Because it is easy to point to imperialism, white supremacy, and all that sort of thing. Look, they have come to get us, and we are Africans, we wouldn't let them. And proud people like the Somalis, it's very easy to whip up emotions with a message like that. So you have to be very, very careful. Even in Kenya, Kenya is supposed to be a British stooge, and that plays into the scenario. It isn't just Somalis and Muslims who are against the setup in Kenya. Other people who are anti-imperialists are also joining. Okay. So you have to be extremely careful and measure what you do.
Well, briefly, Dorcas, go on.
And I want to add the strengthening of those institutions. Is it a question of strengthening the African Union? And the African Union has wider use, but I think we need to look at whether the strength of that institution is strong enough to take a huge issue like this in the region.
Let's talk about what's going on in Zimbabwe. Analysts are predicting that Robert Mugabe is not going to give too much away about who he'd prefer to take over from him. He doesn't want to encourage anyone to challenge him. What are the chances, do you think, that he's going to name someone other than Grace Mugabe?
What is going on in Zimbabwe at the moment is so disgraceful. I don't even know the details or care. The point is, these are people you've been ruling with for a number of years. Suddenly, you would even allow them to the venue so that they can make a case if somebody accuses them that they are trying to bring America to overthrow Mugabe. That's a very serious charge to make against a person who has risked her life in the bush to fight Ian Smith and co. Well,
these are accusations against Joyce Majura.
Absolutely. It's just not fair, and I don't understand why Mr. Mugabe, at this stage of his life, is indulging in such an injustice. It's terrible.
Dorcas, speculate for us. What do you think is going on?
Listen, I'm all for women development. We love that in Africa. Joyce Banda, you know, in Liberia we have a female president, but let it be the right candidate. Joyce has no governance experience. She hasn't got that. She's got a track record of being next to Mr. Mugabe. She shops around the world. She has no experience in managing a country. We worry. We've got the perfect ingredients now for unstable Zimbabwe. We've got an unstable economy. We've got power struggles. We've got what looks like a family overthrow. We've got a tumbling with the constitution. That's perfect conditions for an unstable civilian.
So who then? Who? He says he will only be removed by the power of God. When he goes, and he will, who will take over? Who should take over?
Look, I don't mind who takes over, but it should be done properly, with justice. That is all I'm saying.
Is that likely?
I worry that we may have... I think Zimbabweans are too good and they know enough. We've suffered enough not to want to go back to the status quo that we had in 2008. But where you have such power struggles, it's going to be very difficult. The problem is Mr. Mugabe has not named or groomed, frankly, anybody over the years to take over the country. If he, you know, dies tonight, we are in serious trouble. Regionally, South Africa doesn't wink at us because they gain from our chaos.
I disagree, because Mugabe himself was not groomed to be president, okay? There was Josiah Tongogara, there were others before them. Even Rex Nongo was supposed to be a possible candidate. They met and the party agreed on who should take the leadership. That path is what brought the peace, and they were able to eventually even absorb ZANU and Joshua Nkomo. You must do things properly.
34 years, I think you will agree, that is too long for somebody to be in power. We need to be taking over. Somebody needs to be taking over our country. If we are at a point where Mr. Mugabe, anything can happen, we're all going to die at some point. If we get to a point where nobody has been appointed to power, he simply goes, there will be power struggles.
So, we'll see what happens at this Congress that's going to happen in Harare. Let's move on to Ebola. Yesterday, President Obama asked Congress to approve $6.18 billion to fund the fight against Ebola. Does this demonstrate that the US is stepping up their efforts, Dorcas?
I think they are. Let's acknowledge this. This is a crisis, and research in a crisis is, from a public health point of view, very problematic. We're talking about vaccine trials that would, in normal sense, methodologically take at least 10 years to come through, and we fast-tracked that, and here we are. But I'm liking this conversation because I think now we're beginning to hear the issues of sustainability. We're beginning to say, well, any program that we put through need to be sustainable, so that next time we are prepared, better prepared for such a crisis. So it does go a long way. What I will add, however, is that research and its implementation has to have local partners at grassroots. Africans have to have ownership of that research. Otherwise, we get into the midst of who brought the virus, where did it come from, and then the treatment process become very problematic.
Cameron, can you see any opposition? Can you see any likelihood of opposition in Congress? Well,
the Republicans are so much against Obama that anything he does, they try to shoot down. But in this particular case, I think they watch their step because Americans are dreadfully afraid of Ebola. And Obama is asking for this money to try and speed up the prevention process. If they have a vaccine, then it means that the possibility of it reaching America will be very low. And also, he's sending money down to Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia so that the disease can be stemmed there.
OK, so he's making the case that throw lots of money at it, keep it away from our shores, and then everyone will be all right. So it's in everyone's interest. Yes. I wonder what you think of the international response to the crisis now. Médecins Sans Frontières has said that it's been patchy and slow. One of the members of the team who discovered Ebola in northwest Zaire in '76 has said that there's no excuse for the length of time it took for the WHO to act, and that they wasted precious time. So WHO criticised. Should African countries be equally criticised for their own response to a crisis in their own yard?
I've always been very clear that we do not have enough local ownership of our own issues. We were too slow. Even if it was calling for help, we were too slow. Medicine so far has huge credibility in this because they're very experienced at managing crises. As a clinician, none of their clinicians have been affected because they are very experienced in these matters. I think we don't have enough accountability and governance structures local-wise, including with the AU, to take ownership of our own problems.
Is that your view, Cameron?
Well, they were stunned, completely. They had their minds blown.
Sure.
Nothing like this has ever happened on the African
Yes, but this is a government. Once your mind has been blown, you have to say, OK, we have to stop our people dying.
Depending on the efficiency within the governmental system. And you know that in Africa, with the greatest respect, this is lacking. There is no anticipation. People react emotionally. They don't plan too well. They had problems. When you don't even have basic health facilities to treat things like malaria, diarrhea, and then you get this huge malaria.
Dorcas Gwata and Cameron Duodu, thank you so much both.
Okay.